Hello. I'm going to show you how to open up a rivet fastened type of 8-track cartridge. And here you can see the rivet, and typically these are RCA brand cartridges. One thing I've noticed with these is the only reason why you really usually open these is because the tape splice comes apart. They don't have rotted foam, so generally these are okay, although these can fall off. And what I found is that there's a couple versions of these that have these rigid edges. The ones that have a full-length rigid edge, for some reason, are more prone to having the splice come apart, whereas the ones that are more of the half ridged areas, such as this one here, where it's only the lower half, for some reason the splices don't come apart on those. So anyway, to begin, as I've mentioned before, try to make sure that the seam here isn't totally covered by the label. It can be a little bit over like on this one, but if it's totally covered you have to take your razor and splice it open. Now one thing you need to do with these is you have to use a soldering iron. Okay, this is just a typical 30-watt soldering iron. Okay, you're not going to do any soldering per se, you're just going to use this to heat up the rivet. If you don't feel comfortable using a soldering iron, find somebody who can maybe help you out with this. Soldering irons are dangerous. They get very hot and they can burn you if not handled properly. It's also a good idea to get something like this, a soldering stand that you can use to place your soldering tip in, like this, when you're not using it. Because once you open the tape, you're going to be working on splicing it, and you're going to still have the soldering iron on, although you can turn it off. But it does take a while to heat up. So, and you also want to make sure that you do have a stand for it, because if you don't place it down properly, you can burn whatever tabletop or countertop you're working on, and at worst, it can cause a fire. So be very careful with soldering irons. What you will first do is turn the tape over, and you will take either some needle nose pliers or even a clothespin or even your finger, and the idea is you want to put an upward and downward pressure in this section of the tape, and you want to do it right behind the rivet. You don't want to pull it on the side, and the reason is if you try to lift up on the side while this is heated up, it will cause the plastic will start to get hot when the rivet heats up, and it can cause it to warp, so that when you close it you're going to end up with a situation where the sides are split like this, even though the center is closed, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that this closes completely when you're done. So let's start with heating up the rivet. I've had this on for a while, and all you want to do is very simply take the tip of your soldering iron and put it right in the hole where the rivet is. And you don't want to push on it, and you don't want to push sideways. All you want to do is rest it there so that the rivet will heat up. And the idea is that the rivet will become hot, and it will cause the threading in the plastic around it to become soft and melt, so that when you pull up on the shell, the threads will just simply pull apart and the rivet will pop right up, and it works very well. And right now I will heat this up, and like I said, don't push on it like this and don't push down, just let it rest there. I'll put my hand here and I'll start to pull an upward pressure here, or I'll use this, and you can see it happening right now. See? Actually, that didn't take too long at all. Normally it takes a little while, but as you can see, I heated it up and it's separated. And it's almost out. Actually, most of the time it usually takes longer than that, but this time it actually came out pretty easily. And you can see there's a bit of the plastic melted here already, kind of gooey. But it's no big deal. What you want to do is, as soon as you get it up, you want to flip the tape over, like so. And you want to make sure now that this rivet, which is still hot, does not touch the tape. If it does, it will melt and damage a spot in the tape. So keep that apart from there. And actually keep this somewhat elevated too, so that the rivet doesn't touch anything or get hot with anything in contact. This one I've actually already fixed the splice, but I'm going to fix it again anyway just to demonstrate this. I think this one, the splice actually broke luckily at the end of the tape and I didn't have to take it apart. But this is how I normally will fix a splice. I'll just pretend this one broke. Okay, I'll take off the splice. And this technique for fixing the splice applies basically to any of the tapes that I've worked on. What will happen most commonly when the splices break is that you'll have some residual glue on the end of the splice here, right about there. It's dried on and it really should be scraped off. If you don't scrape it off and you put the new tape on, it will not really have a permanent base to adhere to, and it could come off again. So I usually take a straight edge screwdriver and I hold the end of the tape flat and I just scrape along the top and I just scrape off the old glue like this. Very simple. Just scrape it off like that. Just hold it at an angle and work it off, and then work on the other side. Same way. I try and get this so you can see it. Okay, scrape it again. Get all the old glue off so that you've got a nice good base for the new splice to adhere to. And I also happen to have a splicing block. I don't know how easy these are to find anymore. They used to be very common. You might find them on eBay. This one's made out of plastic, some are made out of metal. In a pinch I found that if you want to hold the ends of the tape together, the back of a Post-it pad, the sticky part, which is not too sticky, works excellent too. And as you can see, you can line up the end of the tape like this and like this. And then you've got a pretty stable surface on which to work without worrying about the tape ends flying up. So see, you can actually do it like that. And then when you're done with the splice, just pull it off. But in my case, I'm going to use the actual splicing block. Just press it in here. And you press it in here. You want to make sure your hands are relatively clean without any oil on. The oil on your hands will impede the adhesive on the tape and not make it less likely to stick well. So you want to line them up, and you take your sensing foil, which I have a roll of here, okay, and a pair of scissors, and you just pull off a section here. Now if you don't have sensing foil, I tried once using a piece of aluminum foil with double-sided tape, and you can probably use that and make your own sensing foil. And you cut a section like that, and you can either use your hand or you can use the tweezers to put down the sensing foil like this, and you just lay it right on top of the splice like this. It's going to go right like that, and you line it up and push down like that, and just rub your finger along it. Now if you go over the edge, you just have to take your scissors and kind of trim off the sides here. If you tend to go over, it's very easy. Just take scissors and cut off the sides. Make sure that's all nice and tight. Okay. Then put the tape back on. Okay, meanwhile your soldering iron is still on and it's still hot. If you wanted to, if you found that you're having a little more time doing this, you can unplug it until you're really ready. Now, before you put the tape down, you've got to work the rivet back to an upright position the way it was. Now there's still enough threading here, see it's still posting up, that you can take a pair of pliers like this, and these are built onto an army knife, and you can twist it and you'll see that the post will recede and go back down. And you want to try and work it back down again so that it sticks up on the other side. And sometimes it's a little difficult, but let's see. If not, it's not actually critical to get it down, but it does make it a little better fastening job. Let's see if I can get this down. And this one's not going to go down too easily. Well, in that case, what I'm going to do is just put the top on and heat up the rivet and place it on top of the shell and make sure it goes down. Most of the time I'm actually able to get that post down again, and what I do is I'll heat up the tip of the rivet and push it down. But let's try it this way. This will actually be a little bit new for me. The back of the tape is actually hooked on by a couple tabs here. There's 2 tabs on this side of the shell and 2 slots on this side. What you want to do is you want to hinge the back first. Make sure the tape is in position. Close it down. Okay. Now, unfortunately, I can't get this cover on all the way because of the rivet. So I'm going to try my best to get it in there. Let's see if I can get that in there like this. Alright. Let's see. There. Okay, I've got it more or less lined up where the rivet is. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to heat this up. While I'm heating it, it'll reheat the plastic, remelt it, and it'll push right back down again. See, here we go. This is actually what I want to do. I want to get the rivet up. So now it's up. You can see it's a little bit raised here. And what I try to do when I close it, get this tape in here, kind of try to work the soldering iron to get a little bit of a twist so it doesn't go straight down. You can kind of turn it then, like this. So it kind of goes back to the original screw threads a little bit. You don't want to push sideways too much because it'll ruin the hole diameter. It'll be a little bit off-centered. And as you can see, the rivet is now settled down into the hole. It's actually melting the plastic around it, so it'll reseal itself. And you don't want to go too far, just about to even with the surface. Let it cool, and there it is. Resealed. Can't even tell it was opened.